Welcome back to Clash of Cultures channel. As we continue on with our college football preview series, today we're going to be previewing USC. Before we get into the football talk, though, as always, if you're new to the channel, please do us a huge favor and leave a like down below, as well as hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so you do not miss a single upload or your favorite team being discussed here on our channel. Also, if you're a returning viewer, we appreciate the love and support as we continue to grow this community. So, like I said, we're going to get into talking about USC. Dad, how do you feel about USC and the reigning Heisman winner and Caleb Williams?
Yeah, I think anytime you return a Heisman winner, you got to feel good about yourself. Even more so USC, because I think Caleb Williams is probably, in all respects, the best player in college football, not only coming back, but in terms of being a pro prospect, right? So we've seen great football players at the quarterback position that we knew just weren't going to be great NFL prospects. But Caleb Williams is a guy who can do it all, who's going to lift his team, probably just really a unicorn in every way from the quarterback position. I think you have to be concerned if you are USC. One of the big things is the defense seemed to be a problem. Now, obviously, second year with Lincoln Riley, you hope you're a little bit better. I think Alex Grinch is still the defensive coordinator there. I came over with him, so USC players just get another year in that system. So you hope you're a little bit better there. They were able to add and I think basically replace their whole front. So USC has a whole new dang near front seven. So hopefully a little bit of chemistry there. And then you're able to bring over some good players to add to Caleb Williams. The great receiver from Arizona, Dorian Singer, was able to come over. As you know, they lost Jordan Addison. So you add him with Mario Williams. You have some nice skill players. And like I said, the story of USC season is going to be how much does this defense improve. I think we know what the offense is going to be. I think they're going to be a 40-point per game team. But if they can't stop anybody, if they allow teams to also score 40 points, that's how you lose to Utah twice in the season. They're not going to be in playoff contention. It's really all about the defense for USC. What are your thoughts?
Now, so for USC, everybody who has been following the channel for the past 6 months or so knows last year there was two teams that I did not believe in, and that was Michigan and USC. Right. I have a lot of fans that are USC fans, a lot of friends that are USC fans. And throughout the year, I told them they're going to lose at some point. Obviously, they eventually did, but they did prove me wrong throughout the year.
It was a while.
They did prove me wrong. Now, I will say going into this year, if there is two teams that I would say is, in my eyes, a lock for the playoffs, it's Michigan and USC. The reason why I think Michigan, they're my favorites to win the Big Ten and eventually get in, and USC is my favorites to win the Pac-12 and get in. I think the gap between USC and the rest of the Pac-12 is pretty sizable. Now you have Oregon, who's supposed to be pretty good this year. It's going to come down to that game. But I think with bringing back Caleb Williams and what you just said is, in your eyes, the best player in college football. In my eyes, he is as well. Easily the best quarterback. Now you have Marvin Harrison, stuff like that, other players who are outside of the quarterback position. But I would say quarterback-wise, he's the best quarterback in the country, and I don't think it's close. Now, they haven't been to a championship game in, 20 seasons? They haven't won one since they had
has it been 20?
Yeah, I think 2005, right? 2004 was the last time they've been.
Yeah, the Texas game.
Yeah, so that was in 2005. So,
so they won it
18 years ago.
That,
yeah, so about 19 seasons. So, I think they have a really good shot at this year. It just depends how good the defense is. Now, you mentioned Alex Grinch. He's a great defensive coordinator, obviously. I anticipate them being a lot better than they were last year. It's hard to be as bad as they were last year, just to give some perspective. So USC's their defense gave up 29 points per game and 425 yards a game.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Just to compare to other, top teams, Georgia gave up 14 points per game and only 295 yards. Ohio State, 21 points per game and 320 yards. And then, so these two teams are going to be lower level teams, but still playoff type contenders. Notre Dame gave up 23 points per game and 330 yards. And then Oregon gave up 27 points per game and 380 yards. So, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's tough because, again, remember, they're playing in the Pac-12 where offense is prevalent, right? And we're going to talk about some of these players, but in a conference where you have Bo Nix, where you have rushing, where you have Penix, right? If you cannot stop, and Caleb Williams had a great year, but Caleb Williams doesn't play defense, and he didn't play defense against Utah. And a lot of that Utah team is coming back. I think Oregon's going to be better than they were last year. I think Washington's going to be better than they were last year. So again, we talked about the fact that I think they're bringing in like 5 transfer players that they expect to start on defense, but I think it's also a chemistry thing, right? These guys probably left their team for a reason. They probably, and I don't know them all, but they probably left for a reason. The fact that you're walking into a starting spot at USC speaks to how poor the defense was at USC last year.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that also will kind of speak to how much better they're going to be. Like I said, that you can only be. I feel like as bad as they were last year, I feel like you can't be worse than that.
No,
I mean, obviously they brought in from A&M Anthony Lucas. He's a former 4-star recruit. Keon Bars, a former 3-star recruit, defensive lineman. Jack Sullivan, 4-star transfer out of Purdue, veteran with 5 years under his belt at the college level. Jamil Muhammad, 3-star transfer edge rusher out of Georgia State, and then Mason Cobb out of Oklahoma State, linebacker, 4-star transfer. So when you look at those 5 guys, like you said, all of them are in the front 7, and all of them are going to get rotational minutes. Now, obviously, I don't think all of them are going to be starters, but I mean, they're all going to play significant football for them. And not only did they bring in transfers for the defense, they brought in 3 transfers on the offensive line, 2 guys from the Florida Gators, 1 guy from Washington State. Those 3 players all started at their schools last year. Yeah. So bringing in 3 starting caliber offensive linemen, which are going to help. And I will say this might be my hot take for USC. I know I said that I have them as a lock for the playoffs obviously barring any slip ups, but I think we talked about Ohio State already and Georgia. I think USC has the most explosive offense in the country, and I do not think it's close. And I'm not a USC fan, but let me just read you who they have. Now, I get you're Ohio State fan. I get they have Marvin Harrison. You have Emeka Buka. You have Julian Fleming. You have Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson. But when you look at who you guys have at quarterback compared to obviously Caleb Williams. So
I'm not going to compare our quarterback to, and I don't want to make this Ohio State versus USC fight. So I'm going to just.
So you have, no, I just think those are comparable when you're talking about top offenses. That's why I brought them up. So you have Caleb Williams being the Heisman winner. You have Mario Williams, the transfer from Oklahoma, who came over with Caleb Williams. So they already have chemistry. He had 600 yards, 5 touchdowns last year. You have Brandon Rice, who had 600 yards, 5 touchdowns last year. Then you have Dorian Singer, who you named, transfer from Arizona, 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns. Austin Jones coming back, the replacement for Travis Dye last year when he got hurt, 700 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns. Not only that, you bring in the number 1 and the number 2 receivers from the 2023 class in Zachariah Branch and Mekhi Lemon. Both those guys were top 15 players in the class, and they're not starters. I don't believe they're going to redshirt. So those are going to be backup guys to Singer, Rice, and Williams. I'm assuming they're going to get playing time as well. But when you talk about how deep their wide receiver room is, I think when you looking at just names on paper, and I mean, even the 3 starters are all very reputable at the college level. Then you're bringing in the 2 best receivers from the 23 class, assuming that they're what they're supposed to be. Obviously, they could turn out to not be how good they're supposed to be, but just assuming that they're playing at the level they're supposed to play at, I think this is the deepest wide receiver room in the country.
I'm going to disagree, but I'm going to disagree because of this. I think Marvin Harrison is better than every receiver USC has.
I agree.
Emeka Buka is better than every receiver USC has. And we can use numbers or whatever metrics because Mario Williams, who is a great receiver, was there last year, and Emeka Buka was at Ohio State last year, and he put up better numbers than him. And like we're talking not close. Mario Williams is at 600. Emeka Buka was over 1,000 yards. But again, I think Jordan Addison is not there. I think that's going to free up some catches, and I think Mario Williams is going to have a good year. I think he's going to be a true number 1. But I would disagree that their skill position players are as good as Ohio State. However, what I will give you is Caleb Williams. The difference between Caleb Williams and whoever Ohio State starts at quarterback is significant.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it's just like a preference kind of thing. But looking at the schedule, for the USC Trojans, I think there's only 4 games on the schedule that I would say are concerning. And that's Oregon, Utah, Notre Dame, and then Washington, which I feel is a trap game.
You skipped. Did you see that game September 30th? Who they play?
We'll get to them later. They're going to be terrible. Colorado is what we're talking about. But we'll get to them in another video. We're not going to talk about Deion right now. He gets enough media coverage. So those are the 4 games that I think are going to be big for them: are Oregon, Utah, Notre Dame, and I think Washington's a trap game. I still favor them probably in every game. But I think Washington with Michael Penix coming back, that's going to be a tough one. Now, obviously, the 2 big games are going to be, or the 3 big games are going to be Oregon, Utah, and Notre Dame. Those are must wins. I think you can drop a game and still win the Pac-12. Just with, I mean, you saw last year how close it was for the race for the Pac-12. But they would still be my favorites out there. But I think USC has one of the tougher schedules in the country. Obviously, SEC teams play each other; they beat on each other. But I would say, other than the SEC and the teams like LSU who have to play a bunch of powerhouses, I think USC probably has one of the tougher schedules in all of college football this year. So we're going to see a lot from them.
Yeah, so I'm going to be honest. I'm not as high on USC as you are. I think Jordan Addison was a much better receiver than maybe we give credit for. I know he didn't have a 1,000-yard season, but I think he is a great receiver. I think Travis Dye was a do-it-all back, and I think that loss is going to be significant. And again, I have major concerns about the defense, and I have major concerns when we're talking about. Now, you listed a bunch of transfers that are either expected to start or expected to be in the rotation. I don't think you add that many new pieces and everything just works smoothly. Like I said, I think the defense was a problem last year. With all that I've said about the offense, I suspect that USC is going to get that right because you still have Caleb Williams who can help. But when you're talking about playing Oregon, Washington, when you're talking about playing teams with Notre Dame, who I think is going to be pretty good as they kind of get their feet under them this year. When you talk about playing some of these teams, UCLA, which obviously is a rivalry game that can always go either way. When you're talking about playing those games, I suspect that USC is going to, and what I have them at is 10-2. I think they're going to drop 2 of those games. I think their offense is always going to be able to score. I think their defense is not going to be able to stop people. And really, almost like you said, right? Any of the 2, you pick them between Washington, Oregon, Notre Dame, and Colorado. I think they dropped 2 of those games.
I don't even know why we named him. So your prediction is 10-2. Obviously, that would be not in the playoffs.
No, I don't think they win the Pac-12.
Okay, so my prediction is I do think they win the Pac-12 and they get their first berth in the college football playoff. Not only that, now, I mean, obviously, I said Michigan and USC would be my top 2 teams that I would say I'm most comfortable with. Georgia would be thrown in there as well. But I think if USC were to play those teams, I don't think USC beats them. So let me just state that now. But I do think they make the playoff. But not only that, heading into the year after that, obviously, Caleb Williams is going to get drafted this year, probably the number 1 overall pick. But I think USC is going to be here to stay. They obviously got Malachi Nelson coming in. You pair him alongside with the 2 receivers that I named earlier in Mekhi Lemon and Zachariah Branch. I think the offense is going to be as good as it's ever been. So, I mean, I guess we'll just have to see. But my prediction is college football playoff for the USC Trojans this year.